Supergirl Special Issue 1, Mariko Tamaki writing and Skylar Partridge on the art. So this is kind of exciting because this is Tamaki returning to Supergirl. She did the Being Super miniseries way back in the early days of Rebirth. One of the best books of that year when it came out. And that was a very much out of continuity, kind of like different take on Supergirl. This is her writing Supergirl in present day DC continuity, and that's kind of cool to see what she would do with that. So I'm hoping this is maybe a test to see if we should maybe get more with her doing Supergirl. I'd be kind of all game for that.
I hope so, because if this team, if Tamaki and Patridge are doing a Supergirl book, I'm going to be there for sure.
Yeah, I was pretty into this. I think the art style works very well with Tamaki's very laid-back approach, and what I mean by that is that Tamaki tends to be a very quick read because she does not overstuff speech bubbles, she does not overstuff narration. It flows very well and quickly. So despite the fact that this was another 40-page, annual size book, I was through this in no time. It went by.
It read very quick, and I went back and got to look at the action scenes again, because as you're going through, just to really take them in, and that's why I wanted to shout out the artist too, because Patrick, it feels like it does feel like being super without being. I'm drawing a blank on the artist.
Joelle Jones.
That did Being Super. Joelle Jones, thank you. Yeah, it feels very reminiscent of Joelle Jones. The inks aren't as heavy, right, and the lines aren't as angular.
Yeah.
But it feels in the same family of art, and so to really, keep that kind of vibe from Being Super going.
Actually, just to go with something I was saying earlier, I was complaining about the flat art and that backup in Detective. This is also a very flat style, but flat in general is not a critique. It's just that certain styles, the way they do it, because the faces here are very flat. There's no shadowing, and there's detail in the eyes and the nose and the mouth, but there's not a lot of some artists will do a lot of shading and lines to represent the cheekbones and how the face is screwing up. This isn't doing that, but it works very well because it has this kind of more. I don't even know what to say. There's more of a kind of a pretty quality to it, I guess. Where you've got Supergirl hanging out with the Super Twins. And it sets up this idea that at least the media are trying to spin that there's a rivalry between her and Power Girl. With it's like, battle of the Super Blondes.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that Kara's been kind of up in her head the last couple times that we've seen her, right?
Yeah.
So just the fact that she seems very distant isn't helping her cause that she doesn't like Paige. So yeah, I like that's where it started off.
Yeah, they're going through a whole media thing where they're trying to really play up this rivalry, and you can see that she's kind of distanced. We get this great scene where she's with the rest of the Super family, and they're all grabbing food and debating what to watch while they're eating, and she's just kind of sitting there in the middle, and the panels are going in closer to her, like she's just sort of in a trance, like everyone else is moving around her, and she's not really engaged. It's actually John who tries talking to her and shows her the thing that Clark made for the twins. So it's very much in continuity. But this doohickey, and this makes her go kind of quiet as well. And John's asking her about what she was talking to the kids about, and she's like, "Oh, they were asking me, what it was like on Krypton." And he's like, "Okay, what did you say?" And she's like, "I don't really know. I remember what it looked like. I remember but it kind of has this. It almost feels like she's got a imposter syndrome a little bit, right? And that would also tie into the fact that there's a second type of Supergirl kicking about that would add to this idea of imposter syndrome. But even on Krypton, as we get in these flashbacks as she's thinking about them, is that she was in these races. She ran track, and it shows that she was very, very good. She was out ahead. But as we see later on, she did not win the race. This other girl named Elsa was able to sneak out a victory. And it gets to this idea where she feels like she's got this insecurity that she always, whenever she wants to try really hard to be the best, she always stumbles and fails. And this happens, of course, in the present day stuff when they're out saving people. There's a big fire, this building is going to collapse, and all the supers are flying about doing stuff. And she goes up to catch this part of the building that's falling. There's someone screaming on the roof. and Power Girl sort of flies up as well and sort of zooms past, saying she's got this, and Kara actually grabs her foot, says, "No, I've got this instead." Now, don't get me wrong, I do think Power Girl's been a bit of a shithead for saying, "No, I'll get it," like flying past her. That's a bit weird. Although, maybe it does indicate that Kara's not flying as fast as she normally would. Maybe she's a little off.
So I took this more as because she doesn't really see the big chunk coming down, right? She's Kara is so distracted about quote unquote winning with Power Girl that she just speeds off. And to me, Paige was going to get the big chunk to free up Kara to get to the roof, right? But because of what Tamaki's telling us about Kara not thinking, and she gets up in her head too much, and every time she tries too hard she stumbles. This is where it really pays off, and so it just shows that she's at fault for her own actions here, which I thought is told really, really well, because the pacing here on this page where they have the diagonal lines cut in there. No, honestly, now I'm reading the rest of the page, I think you're right. I think Power Girl was going specifically for the big slab of concrete that was coming down. Because the way because it's not even like she notices it afterwards. She just says, "What are you doing? Look above you," and then so Kara just missed something effectively, and it falls on her, and the other supers have to come in and help her, and she feels let down, and that's when we get the end of the flashback where she finally lost the race, but specifically lost because she tripped right before the finish line. So. It really sets up that she's feeling down about all this stuff, and she goes home, and Lois shows up with some cupcakes to try and cheer her up, and try and help her. And I think what I liked about this is that it felt like from the start of the issue, it's like, okay, Kara's going through something, and the issue's got a purpose to it, and it's to address that she is depressed, and that's what Lois says, like cupcakes help with depression, and she's like, wait, am I depressed? And she's like, are you? Are you?
She's been very kind of, gentle about how she approaches it. But, and then we see that Kara's an absolute maniac and eats cupcakes by the two by taking one, turning it upside down, and putting it on top of the other cupcake. So the icing smushes together. Okay,
so I thought, no, this is 2 cupcakes.
Yes.
Because I thought she was taking, because there's this internet hack, right, where you're supposed to eat cupcakes by opening it up, ripping off the bottom, right, and sandwiching them together like that. And that's what I thought she was doing. But now that I look at the art, that is 2 cupcakes.
I mean, if that's meant to be the bottom half of that cupcake, that was a very tall cupcake.
No, you're absolutely right now. But I shortcut wise, I'm like, oh, she's doing the whole rip the cupcake, which I've never seen anybody eat a cupcake like that. So, and more power to you. I tend not to eat cupcakes.
No, to be fair, later on, Power Girl does it that way. She rips the bottom half of the cupcake off.
But I took that as it's because they're both Kara, right? They're similar, despite being different, right? And that's the Kara way to do it, That's all I took that as. But you're right, like a maniac, that's how she eats cupcakes.
Okay.
Anyways.
Weird thing to miss, but all right.
I also want to address too, you kind of breeze by it where Kara and Paige are talking, and she goes, I'm not your therapist. Or no, she says, I don't need another therapy session, thanks. And he says, good, I'm not your therapist, playing into the whole, Power Girl mini. But she also says, I saw that place you go to escape. I know that place just as well as you do, Kara. That place that you go, it's not real, right? So it's also, again, Tamaki really stating the fact, like, yes, they are more similar than they are different, and that because in the Power Girl book that I've been reading, right, Paige feels very much the same as Kara is here, right? She kind of feels what's her purpose and where does she fit in the family, right? So just the fact here that both of them are so up in their head, they don't realize that they can kind of rely on each other, right? And so I like that that's being addressed here.
Yeah. I'm still obsessing over the dimensions of this cupcake. See if you compare it to the page before. The bottom half of it still looks just as tall as it was when it was full. So
yes,
you know,
Pete, again, I don't like to say this that often, but you were right, right? Because it does look like two cupcakes, right?
It does. It looks like two cupcakes. Look, I've never heard of this splitting in half, so it never even occurred to me that she was doing that. Right? It was more clear in the later page when Karen does it, because you can see the tear.
Yeah.
The detail's slightly there if you're looking closely for it, but because I've never heard of this practice, it never even occurred to me. But yeah, I knew I wasn't crazy. But yes, fair enough. She rips the cupcake in half, which is still weird to me, for the record. But so she starts talking about okay, like she feels like she's always too late for things and she always fumbles. And it kind of wraps back into her origin story, but in a kind of an interesting way, because it's not just, I'm still sad because I left Krypton and Krypton's dead. Because, Supergirl stories often play with that because, she remembers it and it's a fair thing to do. But, we've done it a lot. What I thought was interesting here is that this is more about the fact that she was supposed to get here and look after Clark, but now that she's starting to feel like she's failed at a lot of things and that she's always like showing up late, this is literally the biggest example of her showing up late to something. She was meant to come and protect her baby cousin, and she arrived and he was, 30 or whatever age he was.
Yeah.
So, like, the idea that that's just like this big, huge, gaping example of something she, and that may even gave her this complex in the first place, where she's, now constantly worried about being late in that sense.
Yeah, it definitely reinforced that,
Yeah. So, yeah. And Lois gives her some advice. She says, hey, like, Clark didn't need you to be this guardian, right? You showed up when you did and became the thing you need to be, and just says Supergirl, and there's like a shot of her symbol at the bottom of the page. But yeah, they hug goodbye. Power Girl shows up and says, "Will you offer me a cupcake?" And Kara says, "You can have one of the vanilla ones." And Karen says, "Rude." Now, right. So I have two minor nitpicks in the art. Then I think the art looks very nice. But one is Cupcake Gate, which we've already talked about and established. The second part here, which I guess is also Cupcake Gate, is that she says you can have one of the vanilla ones. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go back to the previous page, right? They're all the same color. There is no indication in the colors that there are more than one flavor of cupcake here.
No. And it's not like they even colored them to make the icing different colors. So you could hypothetically say, oh, well, the white ones are vanilla and the pink ones are strawberry, right?
Yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine, yeah.
They are the same.
It's all it needs. But they all look the same color.
Yeah. I thought the same thing, too. As I was like, wait, so this is supposed to be a dig that you can't have one of the good ones. You get one of the vanilla, the plain. It's like, they all look plain. So, and it's not like she was making a wry joke, right? It's, Paige follows up with rude.
Yeah.
So.
Which, and for the record, vanilla gets a bad rap. Like, good vanilla is very tasty. Okay? It simply is. People look at it as the plain one, and it's like, no. If you get good vanilla ice cream, it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it can help accent things too, right? Like, I don't want chocolate in my sundae, right? Chocolate ice cream, it's going to be too rich and there's too much other things going on. Vanilla's a nice base for that type of stuff. Like, I'll take a chocolate milkshake. That's a little bit different. But yeah, no, vanilla. But when it comes to cupcakes and stuff too, vanilla is kind of plain. It is kind of the last picked, if you will.
I think you have vanilla with like just a light bit of chocolate sprinkle. Just a little accent of a flavor on top of it, as opposed to, an intense thing. Kind of like a chocolate chip cookie versus a double chocolate chip cookie. I typically prefer the regular chocolate chip cookie because I feel like just a hint of chocolate is nicer than just everything's ultra chocolatey the entire time.
Full.
Yeah. Anywho,
the death by chocolate.
We're getting into another debate. So
when they get in here, right? Paige is like, hey, do you want to know what the security guard said when I saved him? When I put him in the ambulance, and Kara, of course, wants to know. And she goes, thanks, Supergirl. You're my favorite. Right? So even in this whole idea that they're supposed to, the media is pitting them against each other, the people that they're saving aren't noticing, right? They just see a blonde super family member and assume that it's Supergirl.
If anything, this was
And
probably
they both have a good laugh about that.
This should give Power Girl a complex that she's just going to be constantly mistaken for Supergirl.
And I think that's what Tamaki's talking about is like, look, we're all on the same team here, right? So, you know, if I'm going to be mistaken for you, you know, that's not bad because you're Supergirl. You know, that's how I took it here, because they have a laugh about this, you know, because, and she says, you know, why is it so funny? And Paige goes, well, you know, being a hero is not easy, and sometimes you have to laugh about things. You know, so it really just kind of drives that home that they're on the same team. You know, at the end of the day, they shouldn't be competing with one another. They should be supporting one another. And I liked overall that message of this book here, with these two especially.
Yeah. So, yeah, basically it just ends with them shaking hands, and Paige says, you know, you're my favorite too, and Kara says, don't tell John, which is, I don't know, funny.
I like these personal dynamics in the super family. You know, seeing the super twins in the beginning just be their, you know, preteen rambunctious selves, right? Kind of setting Kara off on this head trip just by asking questions.
Well, I think it's interesting because it implies that John would feel slighted that he's not Power Girl's favorite. Oh, it's just interesting to me, because John has never really been presented that way before.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I'm not saying it's a problem. It's not presented as a serious thing. They're just kind of joking around when they say it, so it's not a big deal. But they've never really presented John that way before, so I just thought it was interesting to sort of put that little sort of, you know, slightly vain tidbit in about John, that he would be a little miffed per se if that ever came up.
And he is friends with Damian, right? So maybe some of that rubbed off on him. Yes, he assumes he's everybody's favorite super family member. He is the son of Superman, you know, like biological. So
I mean,
but no, this was a nice, light, fun read. Like, you know, I would like a Supergirl book on the stands. I know we have Power Girl right now, but you know, if this was like a test for Tamaki and Patridge to do an ongoing or at least a mini, I hope enough people saw it.
I liked it quite a bit. I think Tamaki's just got such a good voice for Supergirl, and I like that immediately. It feels like it's got something to say. It's Supergirl's going through something, and she wants to actually explore what that is. And I love as well that it ties into this idea of the media pitting two women against each other, because it's something the media does all the time. Everything has to be a rivalry. Everything has to be, oh, if there's two women in a group, then they must hate each other. They must fight each other. They must be whatever. And I love that she's playing on that misogyny by actually having it sort of happen to Supergirl and Power Girl and do something with it. So I like that. I like also the idea that Kara has a bit of a complex about not being as good as she's supposed to be, because, you know, she feels that she's lost in little ways, like losing a race in her childhood, but even in bigger sense, being here late for Clark when she was supposed to take care of him. And then making a fumble in the field because she is depressed. And I think tackling the idea that one of the super family is kind of depressed, when it's not like they're a moody character, like, you know, this is not like someone who's in the Bat family where you may understand why they're in gloomy Gotham all the time. I like that this is dealing with a character who has got a good environment around them, who doesn't necessarily have an obvious reason to be depressed, because the truth is that anyone in any position can be depressed, and tackling a character like this being depressed, I think, is a positive message. So I like all that stuff, and it's good.
Yeah, and on top of it, it feels like she has that kind of young person, what am I going to do with my life kind of vibe too, and that's also what might be kind of making that feeling of depression worse, because she kind of feels aimless. Right? She doesn't know what her spot in the world is. So it's nice that, you know, Lois, who not quite a mother figure, but let's say big sister type, is the one to reach out to her and be like, hey, you seem off. Let's just have a talk. You know, here, I brought cupcakes. You know, so I like that dynamic coming into play here too, that even someone in the super family needs someone to talk to. So, but yeah, it's a very, very fun book.
Yeah, no. It's always interesting as well, just having Kara and Lois have some kind of relationship. Even seeing John and Kara have like talking a little bit is not something we see that often. So it's fine. And yeah, I want a Supergirl book. I would love Tamaki to be the one writing that Supergirl book. I know there's a Power Girl book, but I didn't really care about it. Partly because I don't really care about Power Girl that much, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. What are you rating Supergirl Special Issue 1?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it the 8.5 as well.